"Sir, step away from the ballroom doors," the security guard said. Nolan Greer kept one hand around the small paper bird his daughter had folded before he left home. "My name is on the list." The guard looked at Nolan's worn black jacket, then at the silver donors moving past him. "Not this list. Please check again." "I did." A woman near the champagne table laughed under her breath. "They are letting anyone into charity now." Nolan lowered his eyes, not because he was ashamed, but because anger would not help his daughter. The guard took his elbow. Outside, across the ballroom, the guest of honor stopped mid-sentence. Her face changed. She moved through the crowd as if the music had vanished. When she reached the doors, she looked at the man being pushed out and whispered one name. "Nolan, before we continue, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from?" Nolan Greer had not owned a suit since his wife's funeral. The jacket he wore to the Ellery Children's Foundation Gala was clean, dark, and too old at the cuffs. He had pressed it under a stack of books because the iron in his apartment only worked when it wanted to. His daughter, Elsie, had watched him from the kitchen table with a paper bird in her hand. "Put this in your pocket," she said. "For luck." For courage. Elsie was 7, small from a year of hospital appointments, with eyes that noticed every bill Nolan tried to hide under the toaster. Her drawing of a red rescue helicopter had been chosen for the Gala auction. The foundation had mailed 2 tickets and a letter that said the artist's family was welcome. Nolan had read the letter 5 times before believing it. He worked days at a city bus depot and nights when he could as an emergency transport driver. His hands were broad, scarred at the knuckles, and careful with anything fragile. He could change a tire in rain, calm a frightened child through an oxygen mask, and make one box of pasta last 3 dinners without Elsie noticing. The gala was held at the Larkspur Hotel, where the marble floor reflected chandeliers like the building had swallowed stars. Women in satin moved past men in tuxedos. A string quartet played near a wall of silent auction paintings. Elsie's helicopter drawing sat in a gold frame near the entrance, though someone had placed it below eye level. Nolan noticed that before he noticed the stairs. At check-in, the volunteer searched the tablet, frowned, searched again, and called over a man in a navy suit. "There may be an issue," she said. The man was Dorian Pike, the foundation's event director. His smile was trained to stay pleasant while delivering insult. "This is a private donor evening," Dorian said. Nolan took out the folded invitation. "My daughter is one of the child artists." Dorian barely looked at it. Family viewing was from 4 to 5. The letter says 7. The donor reception begins at 7. Nolan glanced through the ballroom doors. He saw Elsie's drawing again. He also saw the small white card beneath it, printed with her first name only, as if she were a touching detail instead of a person waiting at home in pajamas for him to call. "I promised her I would take a picture," Nolan said. Dorian's gaze dropped to the paper bird in Nolan's hand. "Sir, this evening requires a certain standard." Nolan felt the words land. He thought of Elsie asking if rich people would like her helicopter. He thought of telling her that kindness did not check price tags. "I will stand in the back," he said. Dorian signaled the guard. The guard's grip was not cruel, but it was firm enough for everyone to see. Nolan let himself be guided toward the side doors because a scene would only make the story smaller for Elsie. Then the microphone inside the ballroom clicked. The guest of honor, Dr. Maren Voss, had been introduced as the youngest director of pediatric trauma at Northbridge Children's Hospital. 28, elegant in a deep green gown, calm under lights that made everyone else look nervous. She was supposed to speak about survival, donors, and hope. Instead, she stared at the door. Nolan looked up just as she stepped away from the podium. Maren Voss crossed the ballroom without apology. Conversations thinned around her. The quartet faltered, then kept playing softly because no one knew what else to do. The guard released Nolan's elbow as soon as she came close. "Dr. Voss," Dorian said quickly, "we are handling a guest list confusion." Maren did not look at him. She looked at Nolan as if she were seeing a room from another year. "Nolan Greer," she said. Nolan's mouth parted slightly. "Do we know each other?" Her hand lifted, then stopped before touching the old jacket. "You told me to count the lights." The words moved through him slowly. 12 years earlier, before Elsie, before hospital corridors became normal, before Nolan learned how grief could make a grocery aisle feel too wide, he had been a volunteer EMT on winter weekends. A highway accident had trapped a young woman upside down in a crushed car while sleet hit the windshield like thrown glass. He remembered blood on her temple, a cracked phone glowing near her shoulder, and her voice saying she did not want to die before her mother arrived. Nolan had crawled halfway through broken metal, held her hand, and told her to count the bridge lights above them. "Marin," he whispered. Her eyes shone, but her voice stayed steady. "You stayed with me until the rescue crew cut the door open." Dorian shifted beside them. "Dr. Voss, perhaps we should continue this privately." "No," Marin said. Nolan looked toward the watching room. "You do not have to do this." "Yes," she said. "Edo." The silence was not kind. It was hungry. Donors liked stories once they knew which side of them looked noble. Marin turned to Dorian. Why was he being removed? Dorian adjusted his cuff. His ticket did not match tonight's donor category. He was invited for family viewing. Nolan held out the letter before Marin could ask. She read it once. Her face changed in small, controlled steps, from confusion to anger to something colder than both. "This says 7, she said. Dorian lowered his voice. The mailing office made a mistake. Then why is his daughter's art inside the room? No one answered. Nolan wanted to leave. Not because he was afraid, but because Elsie's name was starting to feel exposed. She had spent 2 weeks making that helicopter bright enough, she said, for scared children to see it at night. She did not deserve to become a lesson for people who needed one. I only came for a photo, he said. Marin heard the tiredness under it. She had heard the same tiredness in parents waiting outside operating rooms, people trying to be polite while their lives split in half. Then you'll get the photo, she said, and dinner, and the respect this invitation promised. Nolan gave a small shake of his head. Respect cannot be handed over like a place card. The line reached her more deeply than praise would have. Marin led him into the ballroom. The same guests who had watched him being removed now made space. Nolan hated that they moved because of her and not because they had been wrong. Still, he walked beside her because Elsie's drawing waited near the entrance. The frame was smaller than the others. The label read, Elsie, age 7, patient artist. Nolan crouched in front of it. The helicopter was red, tilted slightly, with yellow windows and a blue sky full of careful pencil stars. In the lower corner, Elsie had drawn 2 tiny figures under an umbrella. One tall, one small. Marin crouched beside him, gathering her gown so it did not touch the floor. Is she here? She asked. At home. Her immune system is not ready for crowded rooms. What is her diagnosis? Nolan answered quietly. He had learned to say the medical words without letting them own his face. Marin listened like a doctor, but also like someone who remembered being helpless under broken glass. On the other side of the room, Dorian spoke into his phone, low and sharp. Nolan noticed because men like Dorian often hurt people softly first, then officially. Marin noticed Nolan noticing. What is it? He is trying to make this disappear. He cannot. Nolan looked at her. People like him are good at it. Marin stood and faced the room. Her speech notes were still on the podium, neat and useless. She walked back to them, picked up the microphone, and looked once at Nolan before speaking. I need to change my remarks. Marin did not tell the room a fairy tale. She did not turn Nolan into a hero statue or make his pain entertainment for donors holding crystal glasses. She told the truth carefully. When I was 16, she said, a volunteer EMT stayed with me after a crash. I did not know if I would walk again. I did not know if my mother would reach the hospital in time. He gave me one job. Count the lights. Breathe. Stay here. The ballroom had gone completely still. His name was Nolan Greer. Tonight, this foundation nearly removed him from a gala built on the word compassion. Dorian's face tightened at the edge of the room. Marin looked toward Elsie's drawing. His daughter is one of our patient artists. Her work is hanging by the door, lower than the donor pieces, though it is the reason this room exists. Nolan stood near the painting with the paper bird folded in his palm. Every instinct told him to step backward, but he thought of Elsie asking if he would send the photo, and he stayed. Marin continued, "If our charity only recognizes families when they look polished enough to comfort us, then we are not practicing charity. We are decorating ourselves with it." No one clapped. Good. Clapping would have made it easier. The foundation chair, an older woman named Helena, rose from the front table. "Dr. Voss, are you asking for a formal review?" "I am asking for a correction tonight," Marin said. "Start with the guest list, then the art placement, then the family assistance fund." Dorian stepped forward. "The fund is already allocated." Nolan looked up. Marin saw it. Allocated where? The question opened a door Dorian did not want opened. By the end of the next 20 minutes, Helena had asked for the finance folder, the donor packet, and the event access records. The room learned that several patient families had been routed to an afternoon viewing while their stories were used at the evening reception. Travel stipends had been delayed for months because the money looked better reserved on a spreadsheet than spent on hotel rooms, gas cards, and meals. Nolan did not speak until Helena asked him directly, "Mr. Greer, what would help families like yours most?" He looked at the gowns, the tuxedos, the flowers tall enough to block half the tables. "Stop making us prove we belong after you invite us," he said. "And if money is raised for families, let it reach them before they break." Helena wrote it down. That simple act nearly undid him. Dorian was removed from the event before dessert. Not with drama. With a quiet request from the board chair and a security escort that did not touch his elbow. The difference was not lost on Nolan. Marin returned to Elsie's drawing and stood beside him. "I'm sorry," she said. "You did not do it. I stood in rooms like this for years. I should have looked harder." Nolan unfolded the paper bird. Its wings were uneven because Elsie had insisted courage should not look perfect. "Looking harder is a start." Marin smiled faintly. "Your daughter made that. She said I needed courage." She was right. Nolan almost laughed. The sound surprised him. Helena joined them with a photographer, then stopped when she saw Nolan's face. "Would you prefer to take the picture yourself?" "Yes," Nolan said, grateful. He lifted his phone and framed Elsie's helicopter. Marin stepped out of the shot until Nolan looked over. "Stay," he said. She did, not in the center, not as the savior of the moment, but beside the drawing with enough space left for Elsie when she could one day stand there herself. Nolan sent the photo. Elsie replied 2 minutes later with 3 words, "Did it fly?" Nolan looked at the red helicopter, at the paper bird in his hand, at Marin waiting quietly for him to finish being a father before asking anything else. He typed back, "It did." 6 weeks later, the foundation lobby changed. Patient art moved to the main wall. Family night invitations were rewritten in plain language. The travel fund began sending help before appointments, not after apologies. Elsie came on a quiet morning when the building was almost empty. She wore a soft blue sweater and a mask covered in tiny stars. Nolan carried her only when she got tired, which was a rule. Mara met them by the art wall in a white coat instead of a gown. Elsie studied her. "Are you the lady who knew Dad's name?" Marin crouched to her height. "I am. Did he help you?" "He helped me count lights when I was scared." Elsie looked at Nolan with serious pride. "He is good at that." Nolan looked away because some sentences were too small to hide behind. Marin handed Elsie a fresh sheet of red paper. "Your dad told me courage can have crooked wings." Elsie grinned. "It can." Together, they folded a new bird on the bench beneath her helicopter drawing. Nolan sat beside them, his old jacket over one arm, watching 2 people he loved in different ways make something bright from a square of paper. Outside, traffic moved through the city. Inside, under the quiet hospital lights, the red paper bird rested in Elsie's open palm, ready to fly.